Welcome everyone to another episode of the Ol'Timers comic book show. I am your host, joining me, Hughes. And joining me as always, with my computer isn't playing silly buggers, it is the Professor.
Hey, Johnny, how are
Hey,
you?
I'm all good, man. You?
I'm fabulous.
Fabulous, fabulous. So of course, we wouldn't be the Ol'Timers if it wasn't for our youngest member, the 13th Crusader.
Yo.
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 Right. So we teased this show a little while ago. We are doing a Valiant special. And who better to have on a Valiant special than a guy that was there? It is the irrepressible friend of the show. It is Joe St. Pierre. Joe, how's it going?
Greetings and palpitations, everyone. Thanks for having me on once again.
I have palpitations on a regular basis.
Oh, well.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, too much information. What can we say? Joe, how's it going, man?
I'm pretty good. You guys were having a cool conversation. It should have been live, but I realized legally we couldn't do that. So.
Yeah. We can't have that conversation live. I'm afraid.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
We talk about a lot of stuff we can't talk about.
One of us would probably get arrested.
Cool. So you've this guy get arrested.
So we're talking Valiant. Joe, you were there.
I was there.
You
I
were
was there for part of it, not the whole thing, but a lot of it.
Yeah.
What brought on this? What brought on this Ol'Timers episode? Are you guys reading Valiant comics or something?
I think. Did someone make a comment about something?
We were talking. No, it was. I think we were bringing up when we talked about it on the last show.
Go on then.
We brought up what I can't even remember what was the last show about.
Characters and then
acquired characters. That's right.
There we go.
We talked about
Magnus Robot Fighter and Solar Man of the Atom.
Yeah. We said, oh yeah, Valiant had those characters. We're like, oh yeah, we should talk about Valiant because we don't do that often.
Because they kicked off a whole universe, and I don't think they did much with the characters, but
I don't know, dude. I mean, there are some really cool ideas in Valiant, and there are some that you kind of think to yourself, how did that happen? But we'll save that for when we get into the books. There are several to talk about, and unfortunately we only have an hour, so we don't have time to go through every single one. So we are, as always, we're going to talk about some books, but we've also got some stuff going on here. These are some of the books that we kind of see back in the day. I know a later book, Archer and Armstrong. Anyone remember Archer and Armstrong?
That was around that was like the second wave of new books that came out, I think.
Yeah.
And that one was my favorite one out of all of them because it had a nice sense of humor about itself.
Yeah. So these are the first appearances of Archer and Armstrong, funny enough. It's kind of like Calvin and Hobbes, but serious. And you've got one guy who's like a bit of a drunk, bit of a just living his way, and you've got the philosopher along for the ride.
I can go there.
Yeah, that sounds.
I never thought of it that way, but
what can I say? I see Calvin and Hobbes everywhere. It's my thing. Eternal Warrior, which is I dream I'm a man falling through time and space. I think I loved Eternal Warrior right up to the point Geomancers came into it, and I was like, "Yep, I'm done. I don't know what that was all about."
So were you done in the first issue? Because the Geomancers were around right until the beginning.
Not well. Funny enough, I hadn't seen the first issue till today. But everyone loves a good Eternal Warrior. The one we've got on there is that. Let me just double check which issue that is. Is this number 4 that I'm thinking it's number 4 that I'm showing, which is the first appearance of Bloodshot, a character that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And then you've got Harbinger. 13th, why is Harbinger so important to Valiant?
I think all these books were important to Valiant at one point or another because not only were they introducing new characters, they were also selling like crazy for Valiant. So,
Okay.
but the Harbingers were a young group, kind of
Yep.
they're Teen Titans, if you will, / X-Men.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're mutants, aren't they? The Harada and all that sort of stuff. The Harada's the bad guy that's chasing them across the land and stuff. No, cool. And of course, we can't talk about Valiant without talking secret weapons. The Valiant Justice League, and I know somebody who was instrumental in that, right, Joe?
Who is that?
So
the best logo of the Valiant universe, which I had
It's-
nothing to do with, is secret weapons, hands down. That's my opinion. Best logo.
it catches the eye, doesn't it?
It does. Kenny Lopez did that.
So what was the inspiration for Secret Weapons? Was it just a simple case of we need a Justice League type book?
Yeah, short answer, yes.
Hey, I could work in comics with this. Hey, you know what? Harken to a conversation I've had earlier today. That means I co-created it if I said we should do something like that, right?
That's right.
Mr. Roy
That's
Thomas.
right. Did you have that conversation on this show? Because I gotta listen to that.
Yeah,
I'm
I
still collecting. I'm still collecting other people's opinions because
we had that on No Prize this morning.
Oh,
when
yeah?
we recorded, and we were talking about how Roy Thomas is now a co-creator of Wolverine because he said we should have someone who's Canadian and we should call him Wolverine. So
that is, there seems to be a tradition within the comic book publishing industry that Roy is currently testing. And so I'm very interested in your guys' opinions of that. When will that episode be out?
That will be Tuesday.
Tuesday? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, feel free. Check it out. Of course, we talked about Magnus Robot Fighter again, another character that kind of got nabbed. I have to say that is a really fetching short skirt on that Magnus cover. Yeah, that is just throw some fishnets on that one, and that's me small.
I think Johnny needs to be alone, guys. Let's.
So now that you have these three graphics up, can we talk for a second? And this is the one thing that struck me about all the books that I was actually reading for the pod today, but reminded me of when I was reading Valiant when they first came out 30 years ago. Can we talk about the colors for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Because the Valiant looked very different from everything else that was on the stands based on the color palette, because it looked very much like everything was like almost watercolored. Joe, you'd have way more experience with the production of these books. Was everything were they using watercolors? And
yes, they were called Dr. Martin dyes. Essentially, they're watercolors, not in the traditional, paint from a tube watercolors, but they were called Dr. Martin dyes. The dyes are traditionally used for color guides for mainstream comics up to that point. And so the color guides were what was handed to a printer when they arranged the plates and stuff like that, prepared a book for printing. They were following guides that were given to them by the traditional colorist. So if I understand the process properly, at Valiant, they use those same inks to essentially paint the books. So they're no longer color guides. They were actual pieces of art that were reproduced by the printer, if that makes sense.
It does. It struck me because it seemed like everything we like looking at the sky on that cover on the right, the orange and the greens, and everything was muted and almost like pastels almost. And I thought it made Valiant books, even on the outside and on the inside, look much different than anything DC and Marvel were putting out.
For sure.
I don't know if it was better, but I'm saying it looked different.
Oh dear, that's brilliant. Let me just compliment you by insulting. Yes, okay, thanks. Yeah, great. Well done.
Joe didn't color them.
I know.
I wasn't the colorist. But I mean, there are good colorists and there are not great colorists. So your point is well spoken in that there are some painters who were better than others. And when I was at Valiant, there were a lot of newbies who were coming into industry from like the Kubert School particularly. And, you know, just like a doctor, you know, you walk into a doctor's office, you don't know if that guy's the A student or the C student. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So same with colorists, you know, some were outstandingly great and some were less good.
I guess it was what I guess was I'm sure it was intentional on Valiant's part to make the books look the way they did, obviously, but to make them look that that bright. Some of them were really bright, and some of them were I don't know. A lot of it looked. I know Don Perlin was the artist on a lot of the stuff, and so it kind of made me reminisce about maybe 70s DC type.
you got a hit on for old
Sometimes I have a hate on for it, but no, I thought Valiant had a unique look at the time, which is why I liked it.
So 13 was kind enough to help with these images and books. So that's I really appreciate that 13.
And Joe, I have a question though. Was there a cost element to that coloring process or no?
I imagine so, as I think the Valiant comics were a little more expensive than the Marvel and DC's at the time. So there may have been a production, you know, upcharge of some kind. Yeah, good question. I don't know the specific exact answer, but my guess with my experience is that there was probably an additional charge for that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So
good question.
You got Magnus #1, which is the book that kickstarted the whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right, 13?
That was the first book.
Yeah, cool. I'm sure we've also got Magnus 5, which is the first full appearance of Rye. Is that how you pronounce it, Rye?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then of course there's a dinosaur on this last one, so therefore we all know who turned up there.
Oh, Turok.
Dinosaur Hunter. Yep.
Yeah.
He was a fun character. I liked him.
I could never get with Turok. I think I sold the gold trading card you got in previews free. I think I sold it for £15 once. So he helped me out with that. Cheers, Turok. Appreciate that.
Made you some cash, did it?
Yeah, he did. He did. We have Rye. This is Rye 0 and Rye #1. So 0 is the first full appearance of Bloodshot, which we're going to talk about a little bit again. And Rye #1. I've got it down here noted that it's the first assignment for a certain gentleman all the way down there.
It's my first gig. Yep, as a pro, that was the first one. Yep. Good times.
It's a great cover for your first piece.
That's not my cover, but it is a great cover.
Oh.
That's, David Lapham did the cover for that.
So Rise was set in the future Japan. Is the future your type of thing? Do you enjoy all the sort of techno stages that you get to work on?
I thought at the time, because I was a reader, I was an early reader. I caught Magnus with like issue 2, and I think I caught Solar with issue 1. I was like, these are great comics. And each subsequent one I bought, I liked more. And I think I was still buying them when Rye first appeared. And I was like, this is the best character I've seen in decades. And I still feel that way. I still think Rye is the greatest IP that came out of Valiant. I still see tip of the iceberg type potential with this character, like how much they should have done with it and just never addressed. And so Rye is my favorite character that came out of Valiant, period.
Rye was the first original character by the Valiant universe.
First original character also. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I think they gave up on him. They just couldn't. I think the idea was really sound and really executed really well. But I also think it's quite highbrow, and I don't think the right people were getting it. So then they kind of did like Rye in the Future Force. Then they did Bloodshot, and then you kind of think, well, if you've got Bloodshot and he's based in like current times, why do I care about far off Japan? And you kind of like he had his legs cut out from under him. A little bit.
That's another excellent point. That was a recurring problem with the future titles, not just Rye, but Magnus as well, is how can you get Magnus involved in the current day Valiant universe? Because if you were a collector and you had a limited budget, the future books would be the first ones you could cut, right? Because they're not directly related to the current the current storylines, the current universe. So that was a recurring issue with the future books. Another excellent point. Yep.
Hey, Joe, I got a question here too. So you said that you became a quick fan of Valiant, and then one day they're like, "Hey, you want to work with us?" And obviously you said yes. What kind of a deadline did you have to draw that issue, and were you under pressure?
Oh yeah, the book was 2 months behind when I walked in the door.
Oh wow!
So I still have vivid memories of. I think it was the third page in the script, which was done by one of my favorite writers, if not my favorite comic book writer, David Michelinie. So there's this intimidation factor coming. I'm just a new guy. This is my first gig, right? And I'm working with Jim Shooter and Bob Layton, Barry Windsor Smith, and David Michelinie. I'm like, these guys are giants, in my comic fan world. So that was intimidating to begin with. But then I think it was like my second day on the job, I'm reading the script, and on page 3 it's like 20,000 rebel warriors are fighting 20,000 patriot warriors, and they're going at it, and the patriots have samurai flags and the rebels are wearing this and that, and I'm like, I'm gonna draw thousands of characters. I remember one day there's another page later on where I had to draw a spiral staircase in perspective. This was in Rye. Rye had his own pod that was specifically designated for him, and inside his living quarters there was a spiral staircase, and I had to draw a spiral staircase. And I remember taking a break because I spent the whole morning trying to suss out the perspective on a spiral staircase. And I remember I just needed to take a break, and like going to the local pizza place by myself and just crying over my pizza. Like, this is what I worked my entire life for, and I'm dropping the ball, And so I'm just like, so I just ate my waterlogged pizza slice, and I'm like, look, you just get back on the horse and get back in. So after lunch, I was just like, I'm not backing out of this. I'm not giving up. Let's figure out how to draw a spiral staircase today. The end. So yeah, I have
hard feelings if I ever ask you to draw a spiral staircase on something.
Well, now I draw a spiral staircase with my feet. So I'm like a chimpanzee that way. I got multiple. So less things are as intimidating as they were 30 years ago.
So this is kind of like a bookend again. You've got Solar Man of the Atom, Barry Windsor Smith cover, it looks like, and Shadow Man again, one of those kind of IP characters. I love Shadow Man. I thought it was really clever. I really liked it, the whole voodoo aspect. What do I have on Solar? I've got some notes somewhere. Where we at? So first Solar out of the Valiant, and of course. Shadow Man's first appearance was in XO4, Exo Man of War 4. So, 13th did all the research. So, I take it's gospel when 13th gets it done.
Well, XO4 was actually the first appearance of Jack Boniface, and then he appeared as Shadow Man in #1.
Once upon a time, I owned every single Valiant book.
I still do.
During COVID, I sold them all. I did find a retailer friend of mine helped me sell them to someone else. They're in good care.
Cool.
I am. Go ahead, Johnny.
No, it's fine. Go.
No, so I came in probably like 4 or 5 months into Valiant, and that was at that time was, you know, we were all speculators back then. Remember, that was the point in time where 1 million copies of Spider-Man were being sold, and X-Men and X-Force, and then of course, so Valiant comes out, and they're all of a sudden the new guy on the block, and people are just buying their books up like crazy. And I remember having a horrible time trying to find the second issue of Harbinger, and and looking at just remember looking at those Wizard magazines and seeing it on the top 10 every month, and like how much I was going to have to pay for it if I found it, and I ended up finding one, and it's still to this day probably the most money I've ever spent on a comic book.
Do you remember how much it was?
It was like $200.
Oh, no kidding! Really?
And it was only for a book that was only like less than a year old. I was like, and this was back in 1992, and I was like,
what number did you say?
Number 2. The second, it was, and the reason it was so expensive was because the second issue had a like notoriously low print run, so it was super hard to find. And I had the first issue and the third issue, and I was like, I gotta get the second issue, and I'm embarrassed now to tell you that I spent that much on it, because it definitely didn't hold its value. It's probably in a quarter box somewhere. But
no.
Don't take financial advice from this guy.
It was before I was in the industry.
Buy high, sell low. Right. So
yeah, exactly.
Go Collect has a 9.6 at $65, although the year average is 35. So there you go.
So 30 years later, I still have lost money on that book.
A valiant effort in destroying your finances.
Oh, there it is.
Oh,
where's the rim shot?
He's back. He's woke up, unless he's gotten socks. Right, now the 13th joined the party. Let's get our first book in here. We're going to look at Bloodshot number 6. I actually own 2 copies of this book, which I picked up dirt cheap. I'm not going to lie, it was dirt cheap because of the first appearance of a certain character. Unfortunately, it's not held any sway on the value of the book, and I still end up with the thing, and I can't get rid of it for love nor money. So there you go. What do I know, right? So 13th, this is your book. Let me just give you the credits, and we can go from there. It's written by Kevin Van Hook. Don Perlin is on art. John Dixon's on inks. And Jade, I'm going to say Mady is colors and letters. I had to it's right at the end. Don't know why letters were created at the back. I have no idea. So, Joe, you were saying offshore that before we get into this book, you have some prelims of this character.
Before Bloodshot became Bloodshot, his working name with Jim Shooter was Rising Spirit, and it was an attempt, like we were talking about, to link the future books to make the future books more relevant within the current day universe. So his original Jim used to have a list of like Marvel and DC characters on his table, and he would check off all those that the Valiant universe addressed. Like we were talking about how the Harbingers were mutants. You know, he had Harbinger connected to X-Men, and X-Men was checked off. Yeah. So the idea of Rye was he was like the Phantom. The Phantom was a hereditary passed on character, you know, through generations, and Master of Kung Fu. So the Rising Spirit character was kind of like a street level. He was current day Valiant universe. He was like a street level, like an urban samurai kind of thing. So these are some of the sketches. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh yeah. Spot on.
Just me belting out costume ideas, you know, based on, you know, Jim's guidance. Here's one here. He looks kind of like a Mad Max type.
Oh yeah.
And
hold on. I'm just messing around with the formats. 2 seconds, George.
Okay.
See if I can get that. There you go. You're in the big picture now. Try that.
Very Shang-Chi in the days when mullets were still in, you know, that kind of thing. And then the one that I think looks most like the current day guy is this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's
Yeah.
I like that shot.
Yeah, very Blade. Yeah. Works.
So when Jim was asked to leave the company, Bob took over, Bob Layton, and he didn't care for the name Rising Spirit. So he said he was taking names, suggestions from the audience, which was the studio, which we had about 25 artists, colorists, pencilers, inkers, writers in the house, kind of all set up in a section of the office. And
then Rob Liefeld called in and said, "Bloodshot."
Put some pouches on him.
my excellent friend Dave Klistic threw out the name Bloodshot, and it was one of those names, where it's like there's not a character named Bloodshot already, and it seems like such an obvious comic book name, right, for a character.
Yeah.
And we had never seen it. I was like, dude, it's freaking brilliant, first of all. and there we go. And so it's funny that we were talking about Mr. Roy Thomas coming up with the name for a character.
That's such a great point. So like you had like 25 guys in a room throwing names back and forth.
Yeah.
And there you go. When you
just to be part of the creative energy of the room, it was a very cool atmosphere that way.
Yeah. And that's just the way things are done, right? So
well, at least at Valiant. At Valiant.
Cool. Excellent. Good story. Excellent. I'm liking this. 13th. Why did you pick this book?
First appearance of Colin King, who becomes Ninjak in the next issue.
Colin King. Do we see him at where is this set? Where is Colin King?
Later in the book. Yes, if you go towards,
I'll tell you what, you don't really help it. You know what
Could you be more vague?
Yeah. I'm not playing around the 13 questions with you two. Do you know how this works?
He's probably on the last panel, the last page, no?
No, I think
he just walks in. Hey, it's me. First appearance.
Yeah, no, you'll see him in a chateau later on.
Okay. So talk to us about this book, if you would be so kind, please.
Yeah, so I like something that was said earlier. What I liked about the Valiant universe in general was that their emphasis first was on story, right? That was the foundation for a lot of things, and have them interconnect eventually. And one of the books that we'll cover later on does exactly that. But for here, what I liked about this, I was lukewarm on the Bloodshot character at first until I started understanding why he was special, is because he had nanites in his bloodstream and gave him healing factor and things like that. He warmed up to me later on. But for Ninjak, this is where it started. Every character has to have a start. So in this issue, the significance of this issue is you get to meet Colin King, who is the alter ego of Ninjak. So in here, he's just after, he's been called in actually to go after a pair of Harbinger terrorists. So Harbingers are mutants, for lack of a better word. And these terrorists are trying to get some components, and they're blowing up airliners. So not only is Bloodshot sent in to track these guys, Colin King joins the fray. So if you go to issue 7, that's when you see his alter ego of Ninjak. So basically, he is a ninja and a spy in these days. I've always liked Ninjak. Joe knows this.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Everybody knows this.
Is this where you first got your boner for a Ninjak, or did you find him and then work backwards?
Well, it started with the newer iteration of Valiant, so I credit them with my interest in Valiant, where I remember these books way back in the day when they came out. The coloring kind of turned me off, to be honest. I knew of it here and there, but with the newer iteration, that opened up the door for me to not only just start reading the newer material, but to go back in time. And I felt such a huge sense of accomplishment with being able to complete the entire first generation of Valiant books runs and enjoying them. But again, like I said, during COVID, I sold them all. They have a good home now. But these two books that we're talking about now, number 6 and number 7, were probably the most difficult ones that I had to get rid of because
Sure.
I love
I like
Ninja.
Ninja. Correct.
You couldn't keep those two and sell the rest?
I thought about it, but the buyer wanted everything complete.
Of course.
Well,
And
I'll be a nice guy. Sorry to interrupt. I have 2 copies of number 6.
Oh, there you
number
go.
6.
And I probably have 10 copies of number 7. I'll give you.
I will send you. Give me a date later, and I will send you a copy of number 6 from my own personal collection just for you. How's that?
What a pal.
You're covered 13.
What a pal. Yeah, and Joe knows this. That the day I met Joe was, in fact, the avatar I have on here is the first thing Joe ever drew for me.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Ninjak. Yeah,
That's cool.
Been a while.
That's
so,
cool.
But this is his debut in issue 7. He teams up with Bloodshot after a rough introduction to each other and to go after the Harbinger terrorists. And right away, I think what's established with Ninjak is, and it says it in the book, that he always takes care of things. And Ninjak was set up as a badass right from the get-go. And then so was Bloodshot. So now you have them in this book. Ninjak would eventually get his own run and whatnot, but this is where it all started. I was not a fan of the original costume design, but I was a fan of the idea of a ninja spy. It was different. It wasn't your typical ninja, if you will. And again, Bloodshot, I warmed up to him years later, so I appreciated him more with time.
A fun little Ninjak tidbit that you may or may not know is that it was already pre-planned that he was going to have his own title. Joe Quesada was doing Ninjak costume designs, and then they retrofit him into the Bloodshot book. Like, in other words, Ninjak 1 was already in production, and they were like, okay, let's make some collectible books, and let's make Colin King appear in issue 6 of Bloodshot. Let's make his first appearance Bloodshot 7, that kind of thing. They did that with Secret Weapons as well. So I have pencil Xeroxes of the original Ninjak designs also. They were kind of fun.
Cool.
Nice. I remember in that Ninjak run, they were playing with foil covers too and things like that. So not only with the color palette, as you guys mentioned, but the different types of covers and then the gold logos and to make these books true collectibles. Yeah.
Ninjak was kind of the bottom of the wave. There's a speculator wave that Valiant rode really well, and Ninjak was kind of on the bottom of the crest. So it still sold pretty well, but by then all the chromium covers were all coming out. It was all freaking assault with chromium metals and foils and foil prints and embossed covers. Those were pretty cool.
Let me give some money on this because we've already talked about the Professor's Harbinger 2. Number 6, which was the first appearance of Colin King. Grade 9 from Go Collect will cost you $34. eBay over here will be anywhere between £5 to £9. Number 7 as a grade 9 is only $5. So the first full appearance of Ninjak is ridiculously cheap. eBay is 5 to 7. Remember, if you're using eBay, guys, don't forget to check out the picture closely. Look out for your grades. Excellent. Cool. Professor, you a Bloodshot fan?
No, not really. I actually because I liked Rye when I was I read Rye, right. And then when Bloodshot came out, I just kind of thought, well, okay, this is kind of like a modern version of Rye, and it was like a totally different character. And then they stopped. Then they stopped publishing Rye, and then all you could get was Bloodshot. So I was like, eh. But I did think Ninjak was cool. And I jumped on the first issue of Ninjak as soon as that came out, and I actually thought that was Valiant's first attempt to actually look super different for a book. Well, all the books we look at today is Bloodshot and Eternal Warrior. Everything kind of looks the same. It's colored the same. It has the same kind of look, and Ninjak looked different, and I like that. So it was and that was the first time I ever saw Joe Quesada do any artwork, and He looked great. Was that first cover, that chromium issue that had all the stained glass pieces coming flying at you? That looked it looked great, right? It was like ridiculous. That cover was awesome. So
I'm not quite sure. I wouldn't see James Bond dressed up in a ninja suit. He's quite loud for a spy, isn't he?
Yep. Purple and yellow.
Yeah.
In the jungle, yeah, he stands out.
Not as much as Ryan. He's
and the silliest thing in the world is that fold-out katana. Look at that! Click, 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 click. Okay,
don't be saying things like that. 13th will come over and
I actually have a katana blade, but it doesn't fold out like that. So,
but I mean, look at it. As soon as you took a swing at him, the thing would fold, right?
Yeah. Hey, listen, he didn't stab him in the back. At least he just stabbed at him, looking at him. So, give him credit for that.
I like the details. So the young lady in question, she's wearing the dove earrings. Have you noticed the bird earrings?
Yeah.
I think that was really clever. I like that.
Isn't that the harbinger?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That's when doves fly from Prince, bud.
Oh.
I like it. He says, I tried to get in the right spot as previously, and it's absolutely totally in a different spot altogether. Never mind. Oh, no. What was the deal, Joe, with having some of the creators listed in the back of the book as opposed to the traditional front of the book? Were you aware?
That was a Jim thing. He did that from the beginning. I think it was my best guess is that he didn't want the creators to be as prominent. He wanted to focus on the characters, the new characters and their storylines. But I also suspect that aside from Jim and Bob and Barry, there were no name people.
Yeah.
So let's keep that quiet. Even Don had changed his name to D. David Perlin. So I'm reading Solar and I'm like, who's D. David Perlin? And I'm like, this looks like Don. Does D stand for Don? Is he changing his name? So that's my guess. But and then of course as Bart Sears comes in and as Barry starts being more prominent, Barry wants his name in the front so that everybody, all the credits move to the front when Barry wants his name in the front.
Fair enough. Time for a quick break before we have another look at the Professor's Choice. Where should we go? I'll tell you what, we've talked about it already. If you want to hear what was said about the controversy of creatorship on No Prize, here's the trailer. Check it out. The show drops the day before this one. So there you go. Check it out.
I got to see this.
Prize podcast. There you go, starring this guy. There you go. So some Brit who knows. It was cranky. It was cranky this morning for sure. When we recorded it. So yeah, you can check that out. It dropped the day before this one. There you go. Right. One of the mainstays of Valiant, whichever version of Valiant you're reading, whether it's the first one, the middle one, the latest one, whichever way it works. I don't even know. Is Valiant still in published? Are they still putting books out? I feel like I haven't seen a book in ages.
No. I mean, I think they came out with one like September of last year, an Exo Manowar book, but
I saw that. I reviewed that one.
Yeah, but I think that's it. So I mean, they're basically dead, right?
The new Exo was done by Liam Sharp. It was written and drawn by Liam Sharp.
Well, they're being published by like Alien Books or something. It was like this weird ass stuff going on.
Cool. So this is the Professor's choice. It is Eternal Warrior. One half of Eternal Brothers.
Yeah.
Anyone remember? Anyone remember who the other one is? Who the brother is?
Time Walker and Armstrong.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That's
Yeah.
what I was thinking of. So this is written by Jim Shooter and it's art by John Dixon. I don't have any other credits on this, although I think there is some other credits.
be.
We'll probably...
I don't know in that first issue if they showed any other credits unless they were in the back of the book, which I missed. But
cool.
Yeah,
John penciled and inked it, so your remaining credits would be the letterer and the colorist.
So I'm imagining that the letterist is Jade again, and same with the colorist,
Possibly,
because her name pops up.
Paul Audio is the colorist, and Nob Rowe.
well, so and that begs a question, Joe. Was there anybody editing these books? Was Jim editing everything at this point, or?
Yeah, Jim was kind of in charge, overseeing pretty much everything. Yep, at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And when Jim got the boot, who was editing, or did they have to hire editors?
I think they started to split things off. Bob replaced Jim, and then Kevin Van Hook was already in the office. I think Kevin became the one of the main editors. And later on, there were a couple other editors. I think Maurice Fontenot became an editor, and Tony Bedard. So things get foggy. I don't go much further beyond like this point. I'm not really sure.
Cool.
And then it's been 30 years, so I don't remember everything. I know Kevin was definitely, if he wasn't the editor in chief, he was a prominent editor. But I don't think that Kevin oversaw all the titles.
Was it ever announced why Jim was left the company? Was there
It's creative differences.
That's another show. That's another show altogether, bud.
Okay,
Really is. Really is.
Right,
I was
we'll
in the
do that
middle of
next
all
time.
that.
We'll do
Yes.
that next time.
But I do, now that I think about it, Bob was my editor on Secret Weapons. So Bob was probably an editor of other titles as well, besides Secret Weapons. So,
and of course, Jim went on to launch Defiant Comics as well after that.
Defiant Comics.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Did you read those too?
I could not. I could not name a character if you paid me.
That
is the Jeopardy question. That's a Jeopardy round. That all by itself.
Warriors of Plasm. Is that what the book that came out from him?
Yeah, I used to like Warriors of Plasm. Actually, I read it. It was quite good.
Yeah, I read a couple of issues and then I was out.
So this is Eternal Warrior #1. You can get this for as little as, in fact, I couldn't find it. Oh, sorry, £5 on eBay, $24 for grade 9 on Go Collect. There you go. Cool. So why this book, Professor?
Oh, well, Eternal Warrior was my favorite Valiant character just because of the idea and the concept of it, rather than.
Surely it's just Highlander.
Shit, yeah, that's cool. It was a cool concept, but it was a Highlander for the but with the family thing. So it was like the three brothers that were immortal, even though they don't introduce. Was it Ivar? Was the third brother, the Time Walker? They don't introduce him in this issue, but they do introduce Armstrong, Aram, and this book, I don't know, like it kind of lacks something in the writing. But it does get the point across of these two brothers who are immortal, that and the story brings them through apparently what is it, like thousands of years or whatever in the span of this book, where the two of them are together at the beginning, and then based on Gilad, who is the warrior of the two of them, and Aram is more of he's more of the lover, not a fighter kind of character. They both end up losing everything by page 5 of this book. So they end up splitting, and then the book really just follows Gilad with Aram kind of turning up here and there. And it was just an interesting concept about where do you show where do these guys end up in certain points in history, and they leave a lot to the imagination, which is kind of where I liked, like, because you could kind of take your brain in certain directions of what these guys were doing for the hundreds of years in between where they met. And then only the last few pages where they kind of jump into modern times and kind of explain where he is now and what his situation is. And then the end of the book is the tie-in to Unity, which is the Valiant's attempt at bringing all these characters together for the first time, right? And then that was where I was like, okay, I like this character because he's going to reveal a lot of the Valiant history over the course of like what's happened in this world for the years. And I thought when they introduced him that I was like, he's going to be a really important character to get to know and get to understand. And I thought it was fun. You know, I liked reading them. You didn't like the Geomancers, apparently.
Well, I'm probably getting it mixed up with later runs, to be honest. If I'm honest, I think I read somewhere, isn't Magnus the robot fighter? Is that not Gilad? I'm sure that is that not how it played out eventually.
I don't recall that. I don't
know.
think...
Is that just me making stuff
there's
up?
there's an Eternal Warrior in the year 4001 with Magnus, but it's not Magnus. Magnus is a son of one of the current day Harbingers.
All right, okay, cool. That's what got me confused then. Cool. I do think that if you wanted to do an Eternal Warrior and a Geomancer book right now, I think now is the prime time to do it, when you consider how everyone's banging on about global warming and how serious we need to take it, and it could be used in a positive way to kind of restructure that idea for people who want to read comic books and stuff. I mean, hell, comic books nowadays preach about everything else. They might as well preach about the planet.
It's low budget. It's not something that requires a high budget like Rye or Exo. This is two guys in leather running around shooting shit. There's plenty of movies like that. So
I think I definitely think if you're going to build up that whole, listening to the planet, listening to the spirit and all that sort of stuff, I think modern day is a great way to do that. You can see, you could have something like where the world was idyllic, Eternal Warrior was at his powers, at his best, and as civilization has mechanized the world, and there's houses and buildings and businesses, and the planet gets corrupted, his powers wane a little bit, and then he has to do something about it to get, and so on. I think it's doable for me. I just think, that's not, hell, I'll write the damn thing.
I always wanted... new editor-in-chief of Valiant Comics. There he is, right there, folks.
I always wanted to see the three brothers in a book together. Like I wanted to see Eternal Warrior, Armstrong, and Time Walker being brothers and doing their thing. So and I like the concept of Time Walker and Unity, because that was Joe was talking about the future books before. That is the way to get them together. Not that now it's a moot point because they don't have the rights to Magnus anymore, and so whatever. But
or Solar or
those
rights have all reverted.
So in Secret Weapons, George, did you get to play with Eternal Warrior? You managed to
he was kind of one of the prominent side characters, because the Geomancer and two Harbingers were kind of like the solid core through which the stories functioned. And I didn't care for Geomancer either, Johnny, just so you know. He's not my favorite character. His design was really not my favorite. But the Eternal Warrior was linked through time to the Geomancer. He's the Geomancer's protector. And his things started to... how do I say? As there got more and more villains, or more and more villains, or more threats to the Geomancer, the Eternal Warrior kind of allowed the two Harbingers, Livewire and Stronghold, to kind of be assistant protectors to the Geomancer, and that was how I saw Secret Weapons. Was like the threats to the Geomancer were assigned to the two Harbingers, and then Eternal Warrior would come in as necessary. That was kind of my loose core idea.
Cool. Sounds great.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm all for that. Bring that on. 13th, Eternal Warrior fan? Yay or nay?
Oh, absolutely. If Eternal Warrior, the newer iteration, is where I got my first exposure to the newer Valiant, and from there I just started digging backwards. So quickly, even in this time, you can recognize that the Eternal Warrior was definitely a pillar for the Valiant universe, because the one thing they tried to establish was a timeline. They wanted to show you that time was linear, but then at the same time it wasn't. But they wanted to be within a self-contained universe, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So definitely, the Eternal Warrior is the guy that you want to follow, because he obviously is immortal. So he's going to take you through time and or talk about certain experiences that may be vital to the Valiant universe and who it can impact. So that's where the Eternal Warrior comes in. Um, Over the years, he accumulated a lot of knowledge, a lot of fighting skills, and things like that. So uh, later in the newer iteration, you'll see this is why he was kind of the field commander of a lot of other heroes, just because he had that experience. So
Yeah, at least 2,000 years of fighting experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
tough to beat.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. That's what made him fun for me, because you could
Yeah.
put him in any situation,
Yeah.
and it would work.
I kind of saw him as like a Captain America type,
I was just gonna say that he
Yeah.
totally was. If you think about it.
Also the moral code,
Mhm.
not just the best fighter, but also he knew where to apply violence and where not to. That was how I thought of the character. I don't know if that's the official.
Yeah, but he took some time to get there.
Yeah,
he's not. Ironically, he's not kind of, when we meet him here, he's not the kind of moral upstanding citizen right now. But then he kind of evolves into that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Well, there was a conflict between, or a contrast between Gilad and Aram, where Aram was the more of the pacifist, or didn't want to fight and turns into a drunk, and and versus Gilad, who is more of the fist, the more of the violence first. That's one of the reasons I like the contrast of the brothers so much.
Yeah. And the truth is somewhere in the middle between the pair of them.
Yes.
So, you can tell. I mean, my only other comment on this, you can tell it's a Jim Shooter book, because one, it's wordy, and two, the panel designs. There's not many, like, you know what I'm saying? Back then, this was all supposed to be splash art, and you were getting. I mean, we're talking 92, 93, so the Image Boys were doing their like massive spreads and stuff, and yet in this we get quite a lot of standard panels. There's a lot of panel design going on that one, but no, that's fine. Cool.
That was
I
another thing that separated Valiant from everybody else at the time.
Yeah. Cool.
Valiant had a more old school look.
Perfect for this show then. All right. Our final book is my choice. And I was at a comic book mart a few years ago, and the guy had so mart, how can I put this? It's kind of like a jumbo, like a garage sale, but all around comics and stuff. And the guy had a board behind him with all these expensive books on, and he had a Batman Adventures first appearance of Harley Quinn there, and he wouldn't. When I asked how much it was, he said, "Well, I couldn't afford it." I was like, "Fine, screw you." I had a copy already, and he had this book behind there as well. And someone next to me said, "Oh, what's this character all about?" He goes, "Oh, it's just Iron Man." And I thought, that is such an insult, because this guy is not just Iron Man. This is Exo Man of War from February 92. Couldn't find it on eBay in the UK at all. Grade 9 will cost you $38 according to our good friends at Go Collect.
No kidding. It's still worth $38. Awesome.
Yeah, grade 9, yeah. Written by Jim Shooter, layouts by Barry Windsor Smith. Bob Layton's on finished art, along with John Holridge. Jorge Gonzalez is on colors, and Jade. I'm sorry, how do you pronounce his surname? Who?
Like Maydee. Maydee.
Mady is on letters. So there you go. So it is the origin of Exo. Who doesn't love Barry Windsor Smith? The professor doesn't love Barry Windsor Smith.
What?
That's a lie.
I apologize.
You're a damn liar.
Sorry.
Virtual
saying,
glove slap.
Yeah. I'm sure you said you weren't a big fan of his work. Soon.
I can tell you, my brother is not a big fan of his work.
There you go. I apologize. Yeah. So this is the origin of Arik the Visigoth, who's been captured by some space bugs. A running monologue. What is it with naked heroes in the Valiant universe? We've just seen Eternal Warrior get a shower with his secretary just watching. Now we've got this guy running around buck naked. What's that all about? Jesus. Do you guys not like drawing clothes or something? Is that how that works?
It's the Jean-Claude Van Damme effect from this time.
The monologue kind of leads you around the place. You kind of have no idea what's going on other than the fact that he's trying to escape. And then sooner or later he comes across this hard skin. I love the dialect of the guy. Calls them the aliens are hard shells or hard skins. Calls himself a soft skin because he bleeds easy. Then he finds the exosuit. Next thing you know, he's wearing it, flying through space, destroying the bugs, and so on and so forth. It's a connected book. The Harada Corporation are involved in this book because they're after the exosuit, but Arik has its soul, I suppose, in the ring that controls it. And then it's just kind of a little bit like Eternal Warrior, get to follow him through his paths to get him to where he needs to be, which sooner or later means wearing the suit and kicking ass left, right, and center. I absolutely loved this book. I loved Exo. I thought I loved Exo, I loved Rai, and Eternal Warriors. Those were my three Valiant books that I was buying at the time. I picked up a couple of others every now and again, but I couldn't get into some of them. But those were my three. So there we go.
Shadow Man was my favorite.
I like Shadow Man as well. That was probably on my fourth list. So it pretty much as it is. Probably look, fishnets. Whoa. Well, creature habit. What can I say? Eternal and Exo, and maybe some Ninjak are probably the three characters that have got the most longevity. Would you agree? From Valiant.
Bloodshot.
Yeah.
Really?
Because of the movie, probably, right? The movie, definitely.
I haven't seen the Bloodshot movie. Was this the one with Vin Diesel? Vin Diesel.
You don't have to see that.
Okay, I won't go. And my wife's seen it. That's fine. You can tell it's Barry Windsor on the layouts, but it just works. Do you think was Bob Layton tied to this because of his Iron Man?
It was his idea.
Okay.
So it was Bob's concept, and I would have said Bob wrote it. I didn't realize Jim wrote it, but Bob was heavily around when decisions were made about Exo.
Okay, cool, excellent. And did everybody else enjoy Exo? Or was it just a me book? 13. We haven't heard from you for a bit, so we'll go 13.
Yeah, no, you said a lot of the things I agree with Exo. In this case, they just plucked the character from the past. Yet another example of the timeline we just spoke about. They pluck a guy from the past and give him this futuristic technology. So I know people today where you can give them a cell phone and they wouldn't know how to use a calculator on it. Never mind giving somebody from way back when highly advanced alien armor. And so that concept in itself was very interesting. And this book, this first issue, covers that very, very well, as you can see with the dialect and whatnot of Arik. So he would be a very pivotal character in the Valiant universe. And years later, this is one of the ones that kind of took them off Earth, still within the same universe, but just focusing in their surroundings in space and things like that. So
cool.
I enjoyed it.
Excellent. Joe was Was he on your radar? Will you enjoy working with him for your book?
Oh yeah, he's a favorite. Yeah. Yes.
Did you have to sort of like listen to how? Because you hear the stories about the Marvel bullpen, how you kind of, well, you can't use the Hulk this month because he's doing this, or you can't do this because of that. As Valiant was becoming more and more interconnected, were you kind of running into those sort of problems when you've got like a team book such as yourselves? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, Bob was the I don't forget his official title.
Custodian.
He was definitely involved with the storylines on all of the books. And so he would say, this month, we're going to do Ninjak. And this month, there's going to be a crossover with Exo. And so he would kind of shape where I was supposed to go with the issues, for those specific issues or those future storylines kind of thing. Yeah.
Did you find that troublesome or just
it wasn't my book anymore. It was me kind of following orders. Secret Weapons, maybe with the exception of one issue, went in the direction I wanted it to go. So, I was kind of following editorial directions for Secret Weapons and then kind of inserting my character bits and my subplots where I could. Yep.
Okay. Cool. Excellent. Professor?
I loved Exo. I thought Exo was their best book almost out of a lot. I could say I liked Shadowman better as a character, but I thought Exo was one of the best books. Just because I think Eric was one of the characters that had the most growth over the months. As you read him, he became, he learned to speak English. He kept growing in power as he learned how to use the suit more. The book always consistently looked really good. And I really think that he was a really great original character that I'm surprised that they never did anything on the licensing side of everything, like between the video games that they had and other things and movies. I'm surprised we never saw anything with Exo because he's got a unique look and come on, how cool could that armor have been if you were going to like CGI it, right? Like if you were going to do something in the movies with an exo armor. Come on.
I hear you. I absolutely totally hear what you're saying. There are a couple of concerns about Exo though. One, the story I told you about the guy at the comic book mart, it's just Iron Man. So you've got that. And I read somewhere
that's not a bad thing.
No, but now
especially not nowadays.
Yeah, but then you've also got, if I remember reading this correctly, that Marvel at one point had tried to stop Valiant from using Exo because it looked too much like, with the title of the book, like an X-book, like an X-Men book. So there's only so much, I suppose, you can, I'm not going to say get away with because that's kind of a negative, but there's only so many times you can poke a bear. And if you've got like a character that was walking around in armor with a title that sounds like another book that a company's publishing, chances are, if you poke it too much, the bear's going to respond. I would have thought, from the outside looking in.
It would be tough for me to, if this ended up in the courts, how do you say Exo Manowar is so much like an X-Men book that it shouldn't be published?
Well, you've just said it there. It's got the word X, it's got man in it. So, hello. Yeah, you've just said it.
Yeah, but it doesn't look anything like a mutant book. It doesn't sound anything. It's more of a cosmic book, space book. I
hear what you're saying. Well, I'm just saying what I read back in the day. I can see Joe's nodding his head when I'm saying these things. So I must be there or thereabouts. Joe?
There was a lot of that. There were people at Marvel that didn't really like Jim Shooter.
Surprise.
For multiple reasons. And they would, the whole Defiant universe was hamstrung on the first gate because of the series Plasm. And Marvel went after Defiant because they claimed they had a character called Plasmer. and Plasm was too close to Plasm. So even though they were apparently two totally different concepts, so that's why Plasm was changed to Warriors of Plasm. I don't exactly recall, but I do. There is a flutter of a memory going through my brain where Marvel did try to claim the letter X.
Wow.
As part of their, not that they owned the letter, but any title that had an X in it was going to be confused with their line of X books.
Well,
So that was a thing. That was a thing. And I don't remember a specific, threat regarding Exo, but the fact that he's called Exo Man of War, I think may be an acknowledgement of that kind of tension or that kind of threat. But you'd have to ask Bob or somebody who is literally, receiving the legal cease and desist.
I was going to say
So
something.
it's safe to say that the spiral staircase had nothing to do with the spiral from X-Men.
No, not at all. But the genetic spiral. But the point is you can do a lot to hurt a company without winning a lawsuit. You don't have to win the lawsuit.
Especially
you just have to
nowadays.
sue them.
Especially nowadays, called public opinion. Talk about the letter X. I hope Elon Musk isn't aware of that, because otherwise we're getting Twitter back. And sorry, I know the side.
I still call it Twitter. Do you guys actually call it X?
No, I call it Twitter.
When I Google it, I still type Twitter.
I call it something else, but it's not appropriate to say on this show.
It's a family show, right?
And as we're talking origins, we could argue that 13th is such a fan of Bloodshot, and not Bloodshot, Ninjak. Please bear in mind that the numbers 6 and 7, when added together, equal.
Oh, snap.
Yeah.
Oh, snap.
It's like the Da Vinci Code, but I don't want to get sued. You know what I mean?
Didn't the first run of Ninjak go 13 issues? Oh, snap. I don't know if that's true.
It's like the Illuminati stuff.
That's right.
Yeah, the katana blade, the fold-out katana blade was really in 13 pieces, but we won't go there.
Oh, my God.
That's why
so
he never shows his face, because you'd recognize him.
Yeah, he's
exactly. Colin King. You guys know my name now.
Yeah. Right. We're done for another show. We've overrun a little bit, but it's to be expected. We have the fantastic Joe with us to talk about stuff. He was there. He was there as it was happening. So, Joe, thank you so much for spending the time with us. We really do appreciate you, man.
I'm sure your viewer count skyrocket when you put Valiant in your title or your episode. I have an account on Whatnot now where I live stream on Thursdays at noon, and I would talk about my early days in the comic book industry, and nobody knows who any of these characters are.
Well, that's their shame. That's their shame. That's their shame. Professor 13, thank you so much as always.
Thank you, Johnny.
Don't forget to check out the UCPM for all your favorite shows. We've talked about it already a couple of times. No Prize podcast. Check it out. It's a really good show, this one. Really, really good. If you like your DC books, 13th.
Check out the Definitive Crusade, where you talk about all the current DC releases.
Cool. I've stolen Professor's thunder with his No Prize. Sorry.
No worries. No worries.
I'm
tired. I didn't want to talk.
All right. And for creator interviews and chat, don't forget to check out Outside the Panels.
I'm looking at the Professor's bookshelf back there.
Yeah.
Nice stuff.
There's a lot of stuff.
Are those DC omnibus buses in the on the bottom?
Yeah,
left?
DC. Yeah, DC.
Wow.
DC. That's all like my Vertigo stuff, and then Marvel. Oh, there's all Marvels over here.
Hardcore.
I have a Marvel shelf and a DC shelf.
Hardcore. And well, you should.
Yeah. And on that note, I have been your host, Johnny Machine Hughes, and as always, adios.